Hi everyone, my name is Stanley Beckett. Welcome to this talk on the ChangeCreator formula. I am the creator of the formula, and you might ask, what is the need for a formula such as this? Well, firstly we need to understand that we live in a universe and a world that is constantly going through change. We live in a time that we are going through greater changes than we have ever gone through before, and much more is expected of us than ever before. While I was studying for a BSc in astrophysics, I started realizing that everything can be explained mathematically. And we can use maths to even understand something like why change does or does not take place in a person's life. What I'd like to do is just unpack the ChangeCreator for you, and hopefully it will give you insight if you are struggling with some change in your life, where it is and what it needs that you need to refine to create lasting change. At its most basic level, we understand that change takes place when your motivation to change, on the one hand, is greater than your resistance to that change. So when I say your motivation, I believe you get two types of motivation. You get what I call intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation is when somebody from the outside is motivating you. We know of motivational speakers and they do a great job, but the problem is that often extrinsic motivation only lasts for a very short time. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, is something that comes from the inside and something which is long lasting. Now, as I shared with you earlier on, in order to create change, the first thing that needs to happen is that your motivation, your intrinsic motivation to change, has to be greater than your resistance to the change. The moment that happens, the moment that the one side is greater than the other, change will automatically start to happen in your life. So this led me to the question, what are the variables, the mathematical variables that make up your intrinsic motivation to change, and what are the mathematical variables that make up your resistance to change? Because if we can understand this, we will unlock the key to how change takes place in our lives. So we're going to start with the motivational variables. And there are four main variables, as you will see, and then two sub-variables that need to be understood. And we will start at the very beginning, the very first variable to intrinsic motivation. And this is what I refer to as your level of dissatisfaction. Let's face it, if you are not dissatisfied with something in your life, why would you change it? That is the problem with people all the time, is they are unsatisfied but not enough. They want more money, they're dissatisfied with the amount of money they're making, but not dissatisfied enough to create change. You see, the moment your dissatisfaction level gets high enough, you will create change. We can see this in people with relationships. You're unhappy with your partner, but it will take a long time for you to get to that level of dissatisfaction where you will finally decide it's time for change. The same as in a working environment. You might be unhappy with your job, but many times you're not dissatisfied enough yet to create the change. So we understand that the very first variable to creating intrinsic motivation to change is a healthy level of dissatisfaction. Now, once you are dissatisfied, we go to the next step and we move towards a goal. You see, it's all fair and well to be dissatisfied with what you currently have, but the next question then becomes, what is your goal for what you do want? That's easy enough. If you look at what you don't want, what would the opposite of that be? Maybe the goal would be, the dissatisfaction is that I'm unsatisfied with my job. I'm unsatisfied with my relationship. So the goal then would be a new job or a new relationship. Having a goal is the first step, but then we need to look at the two side steps, and that is, a goal only truly becomes a goal when firstly, you believe that it's possible for you to achieve that goal. If you do not believe it's possible for you, then you will not take action and change will not happen. And belief for me is something so much stronger than just faith. For me, faith is when I have the faith that change is possible, but belief is when I have the faith that change is possible for me. Many times we believe that something is possible for other people but not for ourselves. And you need to have this belief that I can change. The second thing that's needed is the willingness to do what it takes. Many times we sit and we know what needs to happen, but we are lacking that willingness to take action. So if we look at that again, we'll see the first thing that's needed to create change is we need to be healthy in our dissatisfaction level, not ungrateful. Remember, we're not talking about gratitude. You can be grateful for what you have, but there always needs to be a level of dissatisfaction. Then you need to have a goal. What is it that you want to achieve? You need to believe that it's possible and be willing. Once that is done, as you will see, the next step of the ChangeCreator formula is you need to have what Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich, he calls it a burning desire for change. If you have a goal, if you have something you're working towards and you don't have a real desire inside of you to achieve it, then you are going to be stuck. Then the first obstacle that comes in your way is going to be the one that stops you from creating the change. So the question is, do you have a burning desire to create change? So let's take a look at it. We've got our level of dissatisfaction, we've got our burning desire for change. But all of that doesn't help you much if you don't have the third thing that you need, the third variable, and that is an action plan. What is your plan of action? If you don't know where to start, then you will be stuck. One of my mentors said to me once, you do not have to know the whole way. You don't have to know every step of the process towards change. But you do need to know at least the first step. And if you do not know it, are you able to go and find it? And then finally, all three of these variables, along with your goals, along with your belief, along with your willingness, all of them are important, but they mean very little if the fourth variable is not in place and is not high. And that is, you need to have the power it takes to create change. Without power, you will constantly be using force. And if you've ever used force to create change in your life, you will realize how much energy it expands from you to create force. So again, what are the four variables that make up the intrinsic motivation to change? The first one is you need to have a healthy level of dissatisfaction. The second one is you need to be able to have a burning desire for the creation of that goal. The fourth one is you need to have an action plan. And lastly, you need to have a level of power that will allow you to achieve. So that is what we have on, as we said, on the side of the intrinsic motivation. But unfortunately, we also have the enemy to change. And that is what we refer to as the resistance variables. What are the resistance variables that will create the resistance to the change you want to create? And once again, we look at the four main variables. The very first variable is your thinking. If your thinking is negative, you will not be motivated to create change. And the question comes, where does your thinking come from? Do you control your thinking? If you can control your thinking, why would you constantly be thinking negative thoughts? Why is it some people are able to think positive all the time and other people never seem to be able to think a single positive thought? The truth is that if you are going to be motivated and stay intrinsically motivated to create change, your thinking has to be on a very high level where you are positive and your thoughts are leading towards the thoughts you need to create the change you want. Then, very closely linked to your thinking, that is the second variable that creates resistance, if this variable is low, is your feelings, your emotional state. Many times we think positive thoughts all the time, but deep inside, we find ourselves negative. We find ourselves feeling down. We find ourselves feeling scared. That is one of the main things that keep us stuck in life is fear. Fear of change. Fear of making a mistake. Fear of failure. And if you look at it, we are taught this fear from a young age, from school already, where we're taught if you make a mistake, you get a red cross. If you fail, you don't go to the next level in life. Of course, we're all going to be afraid of failing. Yet, we realize that some of the most successful business people in the world adopt the attitude of failure is not failure, it's just teaching me how not to do something so that I can do it going forward. Then the third important variable that creates resistance to change is our programming and beliefs. Most of what we believe, most of what we feel deep inside, we didn't even create that ourselves. It was passed down from generations before. Maybe somebody in your generation, your parents, or somebody you knew had no belief in themselves and they passed that over to you. I believe that no child is brought into this world with negative beliefs. No child is born with a belief that they cannot do something. This is taught to us. This is instilled in us as we grow up. So a very important part of understanding why we might have resistance to change in our lives is understanding how we were programmed and what our beliefs are at a very deep, unconscious, subconscious level. And then the final variable that can really make or break a change effort is your environment. How positive or negative your environment is going to be a big determining factor to whether you are able to create this change that you're looking for. And the environment we can break into two parts. Firstly, your immediate environment, your home life, your work life. If that is negative, you will feel negative all the time. You will think negative thoughts. And creating change will be that much more difficult. But then the second part of your environment that is just as important and that can be just as damning to any change effort is the people you spend your time with. Look at the people in your life. Are they predominantly positive or are they predominantly negative? Because if you surround yourself with negative people, we all know the naysayers. The people who will happily tell you why something can't happen, who will happily point out for you why change is impossible, will happily tell you why you should just stay where you are and be happy with the status quo. They are some of the biggest factors and variables that will determine whether change is possible in your life. So as I conclude this, think about this for yourself. Have you ever wanted to create change in your life? Have you ever been stuck in procrastinating? If so, have a look at this formula and ask yourself, where am I stuck? Is the problem maybe that my intrinsic motivation is not high enough and I need to increase it? Or is it maybe that the resistance factors is so high that somehow I need to bring those resistance factors down? But the truth of the matter is, if you can find that balance, if you can just tip, and this is what's great about the ChangeCreator formula, is you don't need to be 100% stronger on one side than the other side. If you are only 1% stronger in your motivation than you are to your resistance, change will happen. Thank you very much.